Welcome to the first episode of a series called Plotting the Lore, where I look at and explain the stories of video games. Today we're looking at the 2022 release Evil West. Developed by the Flying Wild Hog Studios, the game has a similar feel to the early God of War games, with its in-depth melee combos paired with a variety of ranged weapons. The game has a surprising amount of story, with an interesting amount of world building behind it if you look beyond its surface. Obviously, there will be spoilers ahead for Evil West, so you have been warned. With that out of the way, let's get into the video. On an unknown date in the year 1894, two agents of the Rentier Institute, Jesse Rentier and Edgar Gravenor, are riding across the desert on course to intercept a train. Acting on intel from the Secretary of War, James Harrow, they set up dynamite on a bridge they are overlooking. As the train passes, they blow the bridge but have misjudged the amount of dynamite, nearly destroying both the train and the bridge. Heading towards the wreck, they engage several types of undead creatures, but clean them up quickly and efficiently. Moving along the burning wreckage, they continue to slay the beast until they reach the final train car. Ripping it open, they find their target, Chester Morgan, a vampire merchant who's providing catering to a vampire meeting called The Gathering. After a quick but deadly exposure to the sun, he spills that the gathering is in Belmontville. They slam him into a coffin, giving him a promotion to their guide. Realizing that they're against the clock for a ceremony at the headquarters, they decide to make a quick raid in order to secure their final target, Peter Dabino. Riding into Belmontville, dragging Chester's coffin behind them, they tell them they need him to clear something called the Glamour, a hard light illusion only vampires can enter. Entering the town, they find it infested with familiars, humans who work for the vampires in hopes of becoming one. They slaughter their way through until they find a tunnel leading them to the mines below. Working their way through a maze of tunnels, they arrive at a massive bridge with a shimmering wall of glass. Chester, rigged with a suicide vest of dynamite, is coerced into clearing the Glamour, and the group dive deeper into the tunnels, finding a massive red inverted pyramid. Nearing the entrance, they find Dabino and his daughter making a speech to the other gathered vampire heads. He advocates that the vampire species, known as the Sanguige, must leave the shadows and strike at humanity. He believes that their technologies are advancing too quickly for them to control their food source. He claims to have found a way to control the change, or the process of turning something or someone into a vampire. Declared as a heretic for his blasphemous ways, the other heads sentence him and his entire line to death. Jesse and Edgar enter the room and attack him, managing to get him on the ground. They decapitate him and rig the entire cave system to explode and ride off, leaving Chester and the daughter's fate unknown. Riding back to the Institute's headquarters, a giant blimp carrying James Harrow flies overhead in preparation for the ceremony. Edgar heads back off into his retirement while Jesse brings Dabino's head to the director, who's also his father, William Rentier. The two argue over Jesse's future, with his father hoping he takes over as the director, while Jesse wishes to stay as a field agent. The two put their differences on hold for the presentation, which begins soon after, presenting a new gauntlet with the ability to harness electricity and shatter Glamour, which has never been able to be done before. As William presents the new gauntlet, Harrow's burning airship crashes through the ceiling, flooding the room with beasts. The agents attempt to defend, but are driven back and slaughtered, forcing everyone to escape. Jesse meets with Edgar, who tells him to rig the manor to self-destruct while he finds Harrow. Rigging the gas chambers, he heads upstairs to get clear of the blast, but finds his father's bloody and barely alive body. Felicity, Dabino's daughter, pins Jesse as she came to rescue her father's head, but he manages to escape when the pipes explode. Riding off with his father, Edgar, and Harrow, the last surviving members of the Institute, they manage to get clear, but Felicity pursues them. They head towards Calico, possibly the last active cell in the country, but are forced to defend themselves from Felicity's pursuit. Overloading his new gauntlet, they manage to hold until sunrise, and make haste towards Calico. Arriving in the town, they are greeted by the cell's leader, Dr. Emily Blackwell, who begins treatment for William. Harrow freaks out at the agents for being unprepared of the attack on the manor, and takes no responsibility for any of his actions. Virgil Olney, the cell's engineer, sees that the gauntlet is fried and promises to try and fix it as soon as possible. Dr. Blackwell asks Jesse to go recover one of her agents, Scott Bloom, a monster expert who would be able to give them somewhere to begin on finding Felicity. Tracking him to the Devil's Pass, he witnesses familiars transforming into strange creatures, but manages to save Agent Bloom from them. Scott's lead was that the familiars who captured him were bringing boxes from McCallum's sawmill, their next target. Returning to Calico, Edgar pulls Jesse aside and confides that he believes Felicity infected his father. According to William's own protocol, infected means dead, and they are to execute him on sight. Edgar, hoping to save his friend, provides a possible alternative. Years ago on a mission, Edgar found a plant from a random swamp that was supposed to be the base for a cure, but nothing came from it. Edgar believes they can cook up a cure, and to not let William near anybody until he returns. Meeting with Scott and Amelia, they realize that these foul bloods are D'Abano's sick idea of a cannon fodder army, but they don't have the full picture quite yet. The solution? The sawmill. Realizing they have to be able to breach the sawmill's glamour with a working gauntlet, they turn to Virgil. Virgil brings Jesse to an abandoned Institute outpost in Baxter, where they first created the gauntlet, but the agents were all wiped out years ago. Finding a laboratory with the pieces they need, in the same massive room is a massive pre-Columbian skeleton called the Piazza. They realize that this is what Felicity must have destroyed the area for, but don't quite know why yet. Returning to Calico, they repair the gauntlet, and Jesse continues to hide his father's possible infection from Dr. Blackwell. Researching a creature captured from the Devil's Pass with Scott, they realize that the Foul Bloods are containers holding extremely ancient blood. Not having all the pieces to the puzzle, Jesse heads to the sawmill in order to connect the dots. Entering the sawmill, Jesse destroys the glamour surrounding and slays all the undead guarding the mill. In the surrounding forest, he discovers a flamethrower and uses it to clear his way through the woods. He comes across another, even bigger beast, similar to the one they found in Baxter, although this one seems to have died a bit more recent, as it still has skin and blood. Entering its mouth, he comes across a massive parasite sucking the blood from the beast. He kills it and bottles some of the ancient blood for Amelia to research. He torches the entire creature along with the parasite and returns to Calico. He gives the blood to the two researchers who realize that the creature was most likely a Micanac, a minor god in the local Native American mythology. They realize that the ancients' blood is how they create these foul bloods and probably have enough stored to spread over the entire country. As they talk, a scream rings out from the main room. William has started to turn. They rescue the agent he's attacking, but Jesse and Amelia argue over killing him or not. Jesse falls back on Edgar's plan for a cure, and Amelia gives him 24 hours to return, or she kills his father. Heading to the swamp to find Edgar, he manages to find him and rescue him after being captured by some foul bloods. Edgar has the plan, and together they return to Calico. Riding into town, they see Harrow arriving at the same time as the pair, but they manage to inject his father before Harrow arrives. William snaps awake, but Felicity begins to attack him telepathically, and he manages to keep her out with the help of Edgar shocking him in the electric chair. From his visions, he can see that Felicity is in Dickinson, but Harrow calls for him before they can make a plan of attack. The agents keep William's survival a secret, and Harrow surprisingly expresses his condolences. He pulls rank and sends Jesse to Kingston first, to try and steal the deed from the D'Abano's oil field for the government. He sent the National Guard before them, but they seem to have been wiped out as they're no longer reporting. Jesse makes his way to the oil fields and fights his way to the office, saving National Guard and workers along the way. Within the office, he finds Harrow's accountant, Jonathan Biddle, attempting to flee with all the documents. Biddle reveals that Harrow is actually stealing the documents for himself, because the oil fields produce millions of dollars a year, if not more. Jesse, infuriated, takes the documents back to Calico and confronts Harrow. Harrow comes clean, but says that the president won't care, so they can't do anything to him, and tells him that the Harrow Institute sounds better than the current name, threatening the rentiers. Returning to his father, being surprisingly friendly with Scott and Virgil, they tell him about Harrow's misdoings. William uses his connection to Felicity to reveal that she's been moving the leeches by train. Dickinson is a massive train staging yard, meaning that she has access across the entire country. Trying to stop her plans, Jesse travels to the town to try and assassinate her, but is too late to save the last of the townspeople. His attempt is met by failure when she knocks him out and leaves him for dead. He awakens in a church, having been saved by a local reverend who brought him to the last holdout of townspeople. He tells Jesse about a former Institute cell that can control lightning in the mountains, and Jesse realizes that he can upgrade his gauntlet if he's able to get there. He manages to destroy the monster nest around the church to repay them, and returns to Calico, where everybody thought he was dead. Bringing Virgil to the mountaintop laboratory, where Virgil realizes that this is the place where William first built the gauntlet. They go about reactivating the Tesla coils to charge the main tower. Arriving at the central reservoir, they supercharge the gauntlet to give it an increased ability of lightning control. Returning to Calico, Harrow confronts the agents for keeping William alive after turning, going against all protocol even if the cure seems to have worked. He orders them to kill him now, but they refuse. After his blustering, Jesse scares him off and he promises to cut their funding if it's the last thing he'll do. With Harrow temporarily out of the picture, they return to William, who seems to have made a full recovery. Even Dr. Blackwell, the most cynical of the cure, seems convinced that it's worked. She sends Jesse off to go find Edgar, who seemingly went on a rampage thinking Jesse died in Dickinson. It seems his idea was to track down Chester, who's moved into the arms trade after their last encounter, to see if he knows where Felicity is. Meeting with Chester after slaughtering his familiars, they break through his glamour and enter his house, where they have an interesting meeting. Chester reveals that Felicity bought a train company called Persephone to spread infected bats and leeches across the country to infect as many as she can. He gives them the location of a bank in Carmine, her headquarters, but that's not the last of it. Her endgame is to attack Washington, D.C. with her army of foulbloods, with the president as her target. His final reveal is that the orchid they use to cure William is not a permanent cure, and it just takes one drop of blood for him to fully turn. Rushing back to Calico, they find Agent Bloom quivering and corpses surrounding him. Entering the building, they find Amelia over Virgil's dead body. William and Virgil had been working together on a workbench when he suddenly snapped and began killing everyone in the cell before fleeing. Jesse resolves to make this right and tracks his father to Persephone alone. Finding his father at the train yard, he attempts to convince Jesse to turn and to join him in this final frontier, but Jesse rejects him. Outraged, he attacks his son, saying that he will make the choice for him. Beating his father, he readies himself to pull the trigger, as his father says he taught him well. He slays his father and sets fire to him, ensuring that he is truly dead. He sends a telegram to Edgar to meet him in Carmine for a bank robbery. The Calico agents steal Harrow's airship and make haste to head there. Blowing his way into the bank, Jesse finds Domino's head sitting in a pool of blood. After a bit of threatening with some whiskey and fire, the head reveals that Felicity is planning on hitting the president at the theater, where he'll have minimal security. Busting their way into the theater, the Calico gang head to secure the president while Jesse finds Felicity. Finding her on stage, she transforms into a monstrous behemoth, increasing her size the more damage he does. Gaining the upper hand in the battle, he supercharges his gauntlet and fries her in one massive punch, clearing the entire hall of the beasts. With the battle won, Harrow emerges from his hiding place and attempts to steal all the glory. Amelia puts him in his place and exposes his past misdeeds to President Cleveland, who fires him on the spot and places him under arrest. He transfers full control of the Institute back to Jesse, who begins planning with Amelia for the upcoming war with the vampires. Hey, thanks for sticking around till the end of the video. I know it wasn't the greatest, but it's still early and I'm still finding my groove in the whole editing and recording process. I'm planning on making a video on the Guardians of the Galaxy game next, so keep an eye out for that if you're interested. With that out of the way, have a good one, and don't forget to like and subscribe.